Hi again. To jail we go. Schnell in 30 Years Watchtower Slave has been talking about the deliberate attempt to create a persecution, a perceived persecution in New Jersey by means of using the boardwalk in Atlantic City for publicity. Promptly at 7 p.m. on the designated Sunday, I ascended a table on the boardwalk and began to speak as advertised. A huge crowd of about 25,000 had gathered, few of whom could hear me. I had spoken about 10 words when two plainclothes men stepped up and asked me to step down, saying, "You are under arrest." In order to accentuate and make the most of the disturbance, I added a few of my own moves. I had told the publishers to use my arrest as a signal for them to go through the crowd and leave pamphlets with the people, giving them the Watchtower version of the reason for the arrest. They carried out this instruction faithfully, and 17 were arrested. Many of those arrested were women and children. Thus I had created a real splash. While waiting for the Black Maria to arrive, we were quite a public spectacle. That was exactly what we wanted. It was excellent advertising. As a Christian, I was truly ashamed that Sunday night, for being arrested as a common violator of the law of a city in the midst of which I was a stranger. I knew all the time that I was not being arrested for preaching the gospel as we claimed. I was taken to jail and fingerprinted. Soon 2 reporters appeared representing the 2 daily papers of Atlantic City, and I was allowed to talk with them. I told them that I had expressly come from New York City as a representative of the Watchtower Society to defy Mayor White. It seems that the mayor at this time was out of favor with the press. So, of course, our story made good reading. Needless to say, the whole thing rated big headlines in the next day's papers, calling attention to the arrest and its purpose. I had created an issue which was to go on until finally, in another case, we obtained a permanent injunction against Atlantic City, and thus could assemble unmolested on the boardwalk. This next heading is Troublous Thoughts. Alone with my thoughts, lying on the upper bunk in the cell, I could not find sleep that night. For one thing, the place was filthy, crawling with vermin. But worse than the filth in the cell was the filth I felt crammed into my mind and heart. Here I was, supposedly a Christian, picking a fight like any common political agitator with people I had never seen and against whom I had absolutely no grievance. This was quite unlike my Lord, of whom it was prophetically said, "He never raised his voice in the streets." I had ostensibly come here to use the boardwalk for preaching, yet that was really not the purpose at all. It was merely to go through the motions of a defiance for an ulterior purpose. In doing so, I had caused the arrest of 17 other people, some of them children. I was not at all proud of what I had done. I felt truly ashamed, and my soul was sore perplexed. I was miserable and felt that I was the worst kind of creature. When in the morning we were allowed to leave the cells in order to wash up and get ready for breakfast, other inmates began to talk to me. One vagrant, who had been picked up drunk the night before, approached me and asked, "What are you in for, buddy?" I replied, for preaching the gospel. At that he looked me up and down with utter contempt and unbelievingly, with a frown on his face, said they would hardly do that, and he walked away. In his face and in his behavior I could see that he thought I was a liar for saying that I had been arrested for preaching. In my heart I knew he was right. I knew that I had not come to preach the gospel, but to create an issue for my theocratic masters. And now he has the subhead, Rewarded. I was welcomed back to Brooklyn as a hero. Such are the vicissitudes of life as a kingdom publisher. Assignments for zone servants for the new theocracy of 1938 had been dealt out to worthy ones. Up to then, I had not as yet been so honored. I figured that since I had turned down the Bethel assignment, I would not rate another in the field. But the Atlantic City affair once again put me in solid with the society and assured them, so they thought, that I would follow through in the field. Thus they assigned me a choice chunk of the theocracy of 1938, the territory of northeastern Ohio and northwestern Pennsylvania. When I was given my assignment and zone book, I was also thoroughly briefed. I was to correct 2 main things within my prospective zone before I did anything else. First of all, I was told to eliminate the cliques that ruled and troubled the largest company of Jehovah's Witnesses in my zone. Any way I did it was all right, just so long as I attained this goal. Next, the witnesses in this area had failed to raise a single issue, backing down every time they had a chance to do so. I was to raise several issues here for Ohio and push them through to the Supreme Court. Now I began to understand why I had been tested in Atlantic City. The society now was sure I would follow through. One of the Bethelites put it into words when he said, "You're tough enough to do it." Thus, in accepting the zone assignment, I once again was to become a hatchet man for the society. I was to cause trouble for myself, out of which I would not be able to extricate myself for 16 years. In the years immediately ahead, witnesses on whose toes I had stepped were to take a frightful vengeance of me, a revenge which I justly deserved. I was now a theocratic exactor, probably comparable to brass in the image of the beast, Daniel 2:31-34. After being tested in the fire, and so they thought, found worthy, all this time I had remained in Bethel. I might have been gold tops in Bethel. There was at least one advantage, being brass loins in the statue. I did not have as far to fall as if I had been part of the gold head. That might have been a fall which would have crushed me, making it impossible for me ever to function again. Next time in chapter 17, the theocracy of 1938. He sees that as the birth date of the true theocratic arrangement, exemplified by this 7-step program he's just described in the prior chapter. I'll put in a link to Daniel, Was He a Jehovah's Witness? And the Daniel playlist, where we discuss a great many core Watchtower doctrines, including neutrality, the kingdom, and the name. Go through the whole playlist and you'll see a whole bunch of stuff you can use with your JW loved ones. But first, Daniel, was he a Jehovah's Witness? See you soon.